Welcome to the Deeper Into Movies podcast. My name is Stephen T. Hanley. I am the founder and lead curator of Deeper Into Movies. We are a pop-up cinema based in London. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by British director Prano Bailey-Bond to talk about her new movie, Censor. It's a horror movie about a British film censor who links a disturbing horror movie to her sister's mysterious disappearance. Really cool film, and it delves into the world of video nasties, the 80s horror movie Hysteria. As you know, I love VHS. I grew up with video stores. I loved banned films. I loved anything that was edgy and taboo, or I shouldn't be watching it and putting it into my brain. Pirate videotapes was so exciting and also kind of terrifying, because at the end of a video, there'd always be some weird shit after the film that you didn't know what you're about to watch. Is this a fucking snuff film? Is this a TV sitcom? Is it going to be porn? Good times. So here's a true story. When my brother was a teenager, I think this must be before I was born or I wasn't invited, but my family went to my aunt's house, and my aunt is just a totally cute, sweet Irish woman, totally normcore. And she said to my brother, you look a bit bored, do you want to watch something? And there was a pile of videotapes in her living room. So he went in and started browsing, and he said it was just the normal type of stuff you'd expect, like Disney movies, The Goonies, Never-Ending Story, and a fucking pirate copy of The Evil Dead. So my brother took the tape, went into her bedroom where they had a TV video combo, and just fucking watched The Evil Dead at like age 12. And just completely fucked him up and came out, and he didn't want to mention it. But yeah, what the fuck was my aunt doing with fucking video nasties in her living room? How did that even get into the house? Who gave it to her? Where did she buy this? Why did she own it? Fucking crazy. The 80s were lit. Okay, here is me and Prano Bailey-Bond talking horror movies, video nasties, and her new film, Censor. Lost Boys t-shirt today.
Yeah,
sick.
I'm glad you noticed. Because you got Kiefer Sutherland down here. So, yeah. They're only noodles, Michael.
Lost Boys was my biggest obsession as a kid.
Me too.
It was the first VHS I bought when a video store was closing down. And I bought it for £3. And watched it almost every day.
Yeah.
I know people say that, but literally almost every day.
I think I watched it about once a week. I went through a Shining phase as well, where I watched that about once a week as well. But the Lost Boys I used to watch all the time at home with my sister. And then the first time I ever saw it with a crowd was I think it was at like a music festival in Ireland, and everybody was reciting all the lines.
Amazing.
And it was like, wow, all of us were watching this film on our own at home on video, and now we've all come together and we were all saying, you know, like, they're only noodles, Michael, and death by stereo. It was great. It was such a great experience.
Lost Boys was one of those films where, as a kid growing up in North London, when you see Corey Haim's bedroom, and you realize how sucky your room is, and all the... I think I need to write an article on cool teenage bedrooms in movies that are impossible to obtain in real life, and just make you feel really sucky about your home.
Maybe it's because you had more to do in London. Like in Wales, as a kid growing up, I spent a lot of time decorating my bedroom because there wasn't loads of other things to do. So
I tried to put things on. I know in movies they always had movies at angle, just sliding
Yeah.
down. And when I did it, it just looked stupid. And even to the point when in Lost Boys, I used to go around all the time asking for the Vampires Everywhere comic.
Yeah.
And the comic book guy was like, I told you last time, it doesn't exist. Just stop. And I'm like, but it's in the movie. And we're like, please just leave me alone and start asking for this.
We were all living in our own little fantasies. I think I wanted to be a vampire for a while as well. Like there was a definite, I really wanted to join that gang, but...
Easily the coolest vampires.
Totally, yeah.
Me and Bat for Lashes screened this movie in London last year, or the year before. And I said, I think it's got a real Kenneth Anger influence. Mm-hmm. With motorcycle, I think it feels a little bit Scorpio Rising with the motorcycles and they keep on flashing to Jim Morrison, and stuff. But I don't know. I think everyone thought I was kind of reaching, but I feel real Scorpio Rising vibes from the Lost Boys.
That's all good. If you see it, then it's there.
So you grew up with video stores?
Well, we had one near our house. We had one in Tregaron, which was the next town, because I grew up in a village, so we didn't have a video store in our house. But we had one called Elveds, and it was this punky guy in this little town who had basically it was a corridor of wall-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling videos. So that was a special place. I think it had a special smell as well.
What were your go-to rentals? Were there films you kept on checking out?
Oh, they were the ones that I'd record off the telly or buy when I got a bit older and I was able to actually save up pocket money and buy. But The Lost Boys was, one I owned. We had on the video shelf Eraserhead, Duck Soup by the Marx Brothers. Yeah. I loved that. Dark Star, I think that film partly shaped my sense of humor because it's just so bizarre and sort of funny and uncomfortable. And then when I got a bit older, Gummo, as you know, you've got the poster behind you, and American Psycho was a big one for me.
Really? Did you like the book as well?
I actually still haven't read the book, which is really crap of me, but I need to read it. But I've watched the film, I don't know how many times. I used to watch it over and over again.
What was it about that film that made you keep on coming back to it?
I think it's the mixture of humor and sort of trippiness and horror that it manages to kind of perfectly balance. It's so funny. I think of that scene where he's watching his colleagues bring their business cards out, and the pressure he's under, in terms of being the best and having the best, and the fact that that's kind of hilarious, but also really unsettling all at the same time. To me, it was that as a kid really drew me to that film. I think that anything that had a little bit of a wink or a sense of humor definitely got my vote.
I'm friends with the author Dennis Cooper, who was friends with Christian Bale, and he did Velvet Goldmine. And he was saying to them, this was really exciting. This is a really radical movie. And I think I want to do more stuff like it. And he's like, I got this American Psycho script. And they're like, oh, fucking do that instantly. Yeah. But I think Christian Bale's dad was kind of trying to help him shape his career. And I think he pitched him as said to him, you need to be the new Roger Moore. Yeah. And then Dennis Cooper was like, no, trust me, do American Psycho. It's going to be so much fun. So I think he edged him toward doing that role.
I'm so glad he did, because he's so perfectly cast in that. And then he went from that to Batman, didn't he? And then he went from Batman to The Machinist. It was physically the transformation, because you look at him in I think he had his teeth done for American Psycho. I don't know if this is actually true or not. I heard that he had his teeth redone for American Psycho. And then obviously he lost so much weight for The Machinist, and the commitment that he brings to a role physically is just kind of quite out of this world, really.
Yeah, I can't see it being healthy at all.
No.
Really bad.
No. But hey, he lives for his art.
This is true. I'll gladly watch him do it. But can you quickly explain for people who may not be familiar, the video nasties era and hysteria?
Yeah, so basically it sort of all came from VHS being invented, because there was a bunch of horror films that wouldn't get classification to show in the cinema. So up until that point, these films hadn't been seen because the only way to watch them would have been in the cinema. So now VHS has happened, and all these like horror films can now go direct to the home on VHS, and there was no form of censorship in place at that point for VHS. So people started to panic about what these films were going to do to us all, because now we've got this new technology where, you know, these films can be played in the home, people can rewind and rewatch them, kids can get their hands on them, and people freaked out. And that was when the BBFC had to sort of start classifying video. But what happened was there was like a list that slowly grew of banned films. You know, as the BBFC went through and watched these films, they started banning things like Cannibal Holocaust, Last House on the Left, I Spit on Your Grave. And that became like a holy grail for the horror fan and anybody who wanted to challenge themselves to watch the scariest thing that was out there. So it was brilliant advertising for a bunch of horror films. And also by making them illicit, I think they became more mysterious, more attractive. So I think it actually probably made a lot of kids want to watch these films more. So yeah, that's, I guess in a nutshell, the video nasty era. But the hysteria around these films was just fascinating. You know, what was going on in the tabloid press about these films, and the fact that they were going to turn us all into murderers and psychopaths. Is the sort of thing that makes you laugh and cry all at the same time.
As I was saying on my intro, banned movies as a kid were so fucking exciting and so taboo, and it just made you want to watch them more. I had a cool older brother who got me into lots of cool things, and he knew a weird guy down the road who always had banned movies and pirate movies of cinema releases, and so we just had to connect. I saw Clockwork Orange, which freaked me out, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Exorcist. But I was thinking, the thing about these movies is they're always not what you expect them to be from the cover art or what you've heard about them.
Yeah. Well, they were all being like, they were taking all the worst bits from these films, weren't they? And like editing montages together and saying like, these are going to destroy your mind. So you expect it to be like 80 to 90 minutes of like, you know, decapitations and proper full on blood and gore. But actually they're telling a story. But it's quite funny because Mary Whitehouse would watch these sort of montages, and apparently somebody said, so have you actually seen any of these films? And she said, oh no, I don't need to see the films in their entirety to know that they're terrible and awful for our minds. And you just think, well, you haven't really given them a chance then, have you? Anybody who's going to sit and watch like a montage of the worst bits is going to probably think that they're something that they're not. But there's so many great ones in there that, I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just, it's like pure dread cinema, isn't it? I love it so much.
Were these on your radar growing up? Was it just me who was seeking out, I always wanted to seek out the most extreme thing I could find until I was around 25 and I saw that there's a Spanish film called Kidnapped, which I saw at Fright Fest. It was like the year after Martyrs, and something snapped at me, and I was like, I just don't want to see this shit anymore. This is just too much. This is so nihilistic and bleak that I was like, yeah, I'm done. I swerved the Serbian film too. I never bothered with.
Oh, I saw the uncut. Yeah, I saw the uncut version of that, and that was probably one for me that was like, okay, right, this is going over my threshold of anything that I consider enjoyable to watch. And I find that really interesting. I'd love to kind of interview Fright Fest audiences, because the Fright Fest audience are like the most hardcore horror fans in the UK, aren't they? I'd love to like go around and ask them if they've ever seen anything that has gone too far for them, because that's fascinating to me that you watch something that maybe like put a break on it.
Yeah.
Because I do think we've all got a threshold, haven't we? We've all got a point where it's like, oh no, this isn't fun now. I don't like it.
Stop the ride. Yeah.
Yeah.
Martyrs, there was a scene, the girl who had the plate in her head, and when they took it off and there was that moment, and I was just thinking, Jesus, what has that girl gone through? And then also going in my mind to like, there's no coming back from this to a normal life after this level of trauma and pain.
Yeah.
And I just got really sad, and I was like, yeah, I don't want this anymore. Let me just put like a Wes Anderson film in my head and just get a nice Pantone color scheme going on or something. This is just, I'm done. But before that, I was fucking crazy, man. I used to, especially at university, there was like a guy who I met on eBay via email who just had a great list of Asian horror movies and banned movies, and you just PayPal him £20 and tell him what you want, and he'll just send you a stack of DVDRs.
Wow, that's great. That's the kind of guy you want then. I mean, I didn't have anything like that growing up because I was in the middle of nowhere in Wales. So I was just like, I don't even know how I found out about films then, because the internet wasn't around. I mean, maybe towards the end of me living in Wales, we had like dial-up internet in our house. But I guess it was probably like getting magazines and things like that, and just, finding out through the telly and stuff, how, what films were out. And so how did I know about Harmony Queen? I don't know how I found out about him.
So how did Video Nasties and, say, the origins of Censor get on your radar? What sparked this film?
I mean, I was first drawn to the idea of writing something about a film censor. So that was what came first. I was reading about the Hammer horror era in this article, and they said that one of the only rules they had during that period was that censors would cut the sight of blood on the breast of a woman because they thought it would make men likely to commit rape. And I just started to think about a male film censor who really believed that was true, who started to doubt what kind of effect the films and these images were having on them. And that was like quite a silly idea in my head. But I guess I just thought, I'm a massive horror fan. I'm always asked, I make horror, and I'm always asked about why horror. So there's a constant conversation going on for me in my own head about my relationship with horror, why I'm attracted to watching this stuff, why I want to make it, what it does for me, basically. Like, is it a therapy? Is there a cathartic element to it? And I saw this kind of film censor character as a way of me exploring some of that. And so I started reading about censorship through the ages, and then quickly landed in the Video Nasty era because it felt like what was happening, in society was almost what I wanted to explore in the character. So there was this echo in terms of, us all having this complicated relationship suddenly with our moral compass because of the horror that we were being exposed to on screen. And I mean, I didn't know about the sort of Video Nasty era term, like politics, etc., when I was growing up. To be honest, I think it was more probably in my early 20s when I'd moved to London and I started going to like horror festivals, and that was when I started to discover the films that didn't reach me in Wales. Like I remember watching like my first Lucio Fulci film, I think it was City of the Living Dead, at Celluloid Screens in Sheffield, and and just being like, wow, I love this director. And I felt like I'd seen his work before, but I'd probably seen like clips of it. And so I was always a massive Argento fan, but it's just then I just started to discover more and more of these films, kind of as an adult, really.
And how was it looking into the censorship? Didn't you say you could go back and look through the notes taken of films?
Yeah, it was amazing. The BBFC were surprisingly helpful, actually, right from the beginning. We didn't know, if they'd want to talk to us or not, but they were really open, and we went in and chatted to them. And then they let us look through some of the files for things like, we looked at as many as we could. We kept going back and booking more out. We saw the ones for The Evil Dead, I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they go on and on. And it's just so fascinating sitting and reading the comments, because these are really highly intelligent people looking at these films in a very specific way. And to us, they're like fun films we watched as teenagers or as young adults. And these people are bringing this like very educated, very sophisticated kind of language to these films and debating them. And you start to see the individual personality of the censor kind of just peeking through, even though they only had their initials on the files. They don't have their full names, but you start to recognize certain initials. So that was really fascinating, reading about, how they'd approached the different films, what they found upsetting or depraved.
So how did the film come about? So you had the censorship, and then where did the sister's disappearance come into it and the main character?
So I quickly decided it was going to be a female character. So I think it felt more original and interesting to me. And there's a different kind of tension when you watch a woman watching these films to watching a man watching these films. Also, I felt like if it was a man, people might start to interpret stuff related to like sexual violence in a different way, which wasn't what I wanted to talk about. Even though it is part of the film, it's part of the video nasty era, you can't really avoid that. But I was more interested in, somebody who was having who was maybe their shadow self was like, raising its ugly head. So in terms of how it kind of came about, I was writing a treatment quite early on with my co-writer, Anthony Fletcher, and we were working on and off on that for quite a few years because we kept making short films and I was doing music videos. And then in 2016, I teamed up with producer Helen Jones and we formed a trio. And that was when Film Wales came on board and we wrote the first draft of the script. And then from there, it sort of, it flowed pretty nicely, actually, for a first feature. We worked with Film Wales, Film 4 and the BFI, which was amazing, to shoot the film in 2019.
What was the biggest challenge you faced in making the film?
I think going into it, probably in my mind, I was always thinking about how do I keep the audience inside Enid's head? It felt like that was the key to the success of the film, that we have to be inside the head of somebody who is interpreting information in a different way to how the information's intended. She's taking a little bit of reality, a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of memory and dream, and she's constructing a new story and a new reality for herself. And that means we have to be in her perspective. So that was really about obviously casting somebody who was amazing, which I was lucky to find that amazing person in Neve Alga, somebody who could kind of let us into the character, but also working really closely with every department to be in Enid's point of view. So from the way we shoot it and the way we edit it, and then how the sound design works to kind of draw us into what Enid's thinking all the time. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges in terms of telling the story. But luckily it seems to have worked out. Absolutely.
How fun was it making films within a film?
Oh, it was so fun. That was probably some of the funnest stuff on set, to be honest. The girls in Don't Go in the Church, I was quite I was really conscious that they were quite young, and we were doing stuff with blood and axes. It's a fake axe, but it's a very convincing fake axe. And their parents were on set, and I was constantly just being like, "Are you okay?" and trying to explain. And beforehand, I did a rehearsal and I talked them all through it. And we got on set, and they were loving it. They were just like, both of them splattered with blood. Photos of them holding the axes, smiling and beaming, and they really enjoyed themselves. So that was great. And then shooting Asunder was super fun. And Annika Summerson, the DOP, really like nailed the lighting in that scene. And the actors, again, were just so up for it, because it's a very specific performance style that I'm asking them to do there. And, you know, I had to kind of reassure them that I wasn't going to make them look bad, that it had to be a bit kind of wooden or clunky for it to feel of the time. But you're sort of trying to balance constantly leaning into that, but not going too far that it becomes a comedy, because it has to still, like I say, be in Enid's point of view. So, but that was a lot of fun.
How did Kim Newman come on board?
Kim, he is a good friend. So I met Kim in 2010, I think. He chose a short film that I co-directed that was like a M.R. James inspired ghost story, so right up Kim's street. He selected that for the critics circle of this short film festival, and I met him through that, and we became friends, and he'd invite me to his birthday party, and we used to go to the cinema together and slowly kind of develop this friendship. And he's just been really supportive, to be honest, the whole way through making my shorts. He's in Nasty. Lots of people don't spot him, but there's a newspaper in Nasty, and the headline is Merchants of Menace, and it's about video store owners being arrested. And Kim is the video store owner being carried away by the police.
That's amazing.
So that's a little Easter egg in Nasty. And so when I was approaching Film Wales to see if they'd come on board to fund the script, I asked Kim if he would be an exec producer, because he is obviously the godfather of the Video Nasty era. He's an encyclopedia of information, you know, and somebody that I knew that I could go and ask questions about the period, get film recommendations from, show him the script. And yeah, he was amazing and such a huge support. So it was amazing to have him on board.
Any deep cut recommendations you got from Kim that you took on to your film?
I remember him pointing me at Extro. That was one because we had this whole conversation about like Frederick North being a British director, and obviously, you know, it's quite weird that you know, the only films really being banned were imports. That British films are fine; they're not going to, you know, do anything terrible to us. But these foreign films, oh gosh, we've got to be careful of them, you know. So actually, there weren't many British video nasties, but remember him saying to watch Extra, which I thought was bonkers. So yeah, that was
Two more questions. You said if violent films are supposed to drive a person to commit violent acts, what protects the censor from losing control? Did you get to speak to any censors or find out what it is like just watching? How many films do they watch a day? And I'm wondering what it does to their brain just sitting in a darkened room for that many hours as a job.
Yeah, no, they did tell me. I can't remember off the top of my head. I can't remember if it was like between 3 and 4 films a day. But during the 80s, it was actually a part-time job. Now it's a full-time job, but most of them came from a different background. James Furman was, I think, a frustrated filmmaker, you know, but then other film censors that I actually did speak to, such as Carol Topolsky, she had a background in psychotherapy. So she was coming to it from that perspective. And I mean, I spoke to a couple and they both had very different experiences. So Carol was very positive about horror films. And when I asked her if she ever felt like these films affected her, you know, when she got home or left work, she didn't seem to feel like that at all. But I did speak to another woman who said that she remembered like walking down an alleyway at night after work and the kind of images of like women having their throats slit kind of running through her head. But she also wasn't a big horror fan, so she wasn't really used to watching this kind of stuff. And I remember her saying to me that sitting and watching these films in these dark rooms with no windows that kind of seemed like soft porn, she'd leave work feeling a bit grubby. So I think it's all about what you go in with, in a way, as a censor, like, you know, it's about your personality and what you're used to watching to a certain extent. But I think lots of people are surprised to hear how many film censors actually really love horror. I've spoken to quite a few that work there today that are big horror fans, because people have this sort of image of them just hating films and sitting there being like, no, you can't watch this. I hate you, horror film fans. But they have to love films to do this job, because otherwise you'd just be in hell, wouldn't you, sitting there just watching films day in, day out.
Film has kind of shifted from the center of culture, I think. So I was wondering, what would it take for a new video nasties hysteria to rise up? Or would it even be possible?
I don't know, I don't know if that could happen again around film. I'm not sure. I mean, never say never. I think there are still filmmakers who are upsetting people, obviously. I mean, I'm a big fan of The House That Jack Built by Lars von Trier, but I know that upset quite a lot of people, and he kind of seems to go out of his way to provoke, which is something I think is really funny, but that's just me. Like, I'm a fan of his work, definitely.
Me too.
Really big fan, and I loved The House That Jack Built. So I think maybe film's been around for too long. Maybe we need a new type of film, or film to be doing something new with technology for us to start worrying about it, because it seems to me that it's more about the technology that worries us as humans, that we're going to create technology that will change the way our brains work, or flick a switch or something. So at the moment I see social media and the internet as being more of a concern to humanity, in terms of the things we worry about. But it's been comic books in the 50s, and it's been rap music and rock music and video games and all the things that young people get obsessed with, basically. Yeah. And then adults go, oh no, what's going to happen to their brains? So I'm sure there'll be something soon that we can all worry about.
Yeah, fingers crossed for the TikTok kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom. There you go. Me and Prano Bailey-Bond. She's really cool. I like her. Go see Censor. It's out now. We both want a Video Nasties uprising again. I want to see crazy films being made. I want to see them getting banned and passed around on DVDRs, Blu-rays, and shit like that on the black market. Can we do it? I hope so. Again, thanks for listening. I'm Stephen T. Hanley. My engineer is Ewan Henselwood. Our music is by Joshua Eustace, aka Telephone Tel Aviv. Thank you for listening, and see you again soon.